The day you see my face, you will die. Just as you say, Moses replied, I will never appear before you again. And in my head, I always thought, well, wait a minute, in chapter 11, he appears again. He tells him about the firstborn.
Right.
Well, this time, I covered up the number 11. He's still there. He never left after that exchange at the end of chapter 10. Man put in the chapter break, not God.
Right.
So as this conversation in chapter 11 happens, right after Pharaoh says, get out of my sight, he says, okay, here's what's going to happen.
Right.
And then I'm going to go, and then that's it.
So here's the consequences for your own tongue.
Yeah.
Is basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
So.
But I always thought the last several years, well, it's confusing. Like Jim says, if something didn't match, well, the problem was with my understanding. Now,
Right.
oh yeah, duh. Simple thing, but
No, very cool. Very cool. It does make a difference. Anybody else? Come on. Y'all are not that shy. Come on, I know you people. Anybody else got anything else they saw this time that was different from something they'd never seen before?
Pharaoh keep hardening his heart. It's like us, we keep doing the same thing knowing we're not supposed to do it again.
Okay.
Do it again. Kept doing it again.
Yes, sir.
I did like the stuff that what's his face was pointing out. You know, I mean, I thought there was whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Mark.
What's his face up there?
Mark
He got
Betts.
some
Sorry,
good
yeah.
stuff, you know.
You knew what I was talking
This
about.
time.
Anyway, you know that I mean, obviously we've seen the kind of the interplay with like, okay, come on, let's work. Just give me a little room here. Okay, I'll let you go, let you guys go, but keep the the kind of the haggling that's going on. This is definitely a Middle Eastern example. You know, this little haggling that's going on between
Yes,
the two
no,
of them.
yes, no, yes.
You know,
Right.
Little face saving that's being, but I really did enjoy his getting into the Hebrew and pointing out the olive tops and stuff like that was very nice.
You know, if you actually look at God's word, and what is the biggest instruction that He gives to any family or any patriarch of the family is teach your kids.
Right.
You know, and so it's very funny that the very first thing that Pharaoh throws out in basically, okay, this isn't going away and this is really becoming an irritant. How do I make things easier? How do I placate these guys but still keep control? Okay, just don't teach your kids, basically is what he's saying, because he's saying, and Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds, we will go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. And he said unto them, let the Lord be so with you, as I will let you go. And your little ones, look to it, for evil is before you. He's basically saying, now I've got a better idea. I understand the world, you guys don't. And you're going to run into trouble if you take everybody with you. That's what he's saying. So it's very interesting to me that, you can go, but just don't teach your kids about this. So we don't have to deal with this next generation. And then the next thing, what is it this next time? Well, the herds. Okay. You can go and take everybody with you, but leave off your stuff here, because if we leave something at anybody ever left their phone at a store, and you didn't know exactly where it was, but you knew you were shopping that day, and you go to every store to find that stupid phone? Am I the only one that's ever done that? Wow, okay. Well, I've done that, and so it's one of those things. You always go back because that's your possession. You know what I mean? And most of us nowadays are lost without our phones. My kids, I was just telling Jay this. Kids actually erased all my contacts. They completely erased everything. Not last
Now,
week.
Daddy, you'll stay home.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. And it was actually very peaceful for the first time in a long time. So I don't know what that's really saying, but he is saying, Pharaoh is saying, well, leave your possessions here so that I know you'll come back. That's what he's saying. It's not for their benefit. It's not for anything else. And Moses, he's a wise cat. He knows what's going on. But at the same time, he's also going, you don't get to dictate this. Because he's been telling him that the whole time. Guess what? Let my people go. I'm here to tell you, I'm scared of you, but at the same time, God is a lot more scary than you are. I saw a bush, it didn't go anywhere. You know, it was on fire. It didn't burn up. I think that's more scary. And so he's actually laying out that you don't get to dictate the terms. You don't get to dictate the terms. You don't get to dictate the terms. Then he gets ticked and he says, get out of my sight, or you're dead. And he says, your very words are going to lead to your own destruction. Now, the funny thing is that didn't God actually tell him that the firstborn would die before it ever started? He did.
A good teacher tells what he's going to do.
That's right. That's right. When you go back, last portion,
Exodus 4:22.
or the portion before, excuse me.
Israel is my firstborn son, therefore I would, put my son will take your son.
Right. Right. He's like, you've got my firstborn. You don't let him go, and take your firstborn. I mean, he lays it out. He said, the consequences will be, I will make it hard for you. I mean, he's telling Moses, and this is one of those selling points that I don't think Moses really appreciated from God. But Moses is standing there going, but God, this is going to be hard. And he said, well, to make it a little bit easier on you, I'm going to go ahead and make it impossible for these people to be let go. Because I'm going to make it to where Pharaoh will not he will not loosen his heart. I'm going to harden his heart. I'm going to make sure that this happens. And I'm going to take his firstborn son. And it's just like, wow, okay, well, thanks, God. You know what I mean? At some points, you're kind of going, he was just standing there going, wow, you're stacking the cards against me. But when you actually look at what happened, and you actually looked at how he led the people from there on, he had to have done it that way. Would he have had the credibility any other way? Not at all.
Not as to who did what.
Right. Okay.
What's interesting too is he doesn't harden his heart until the seventh plague.
Right.
That's pretty deep.
You know, it's just funny how it's a nuisance until then. It's just a nuisance. You know, these things.
You know, if you will, now that you're saying this, you talk about something new kind of coming up in this portion. Is this general picture of how things work in our lives, how Pharaoh is in our life, those things that God wants to change in us, and how we dicker with God. Well, how about if I just, okay, I won't watch that. Or we'll make a little, you try and step it all the way with God, and eventually he just makes it so, it's like, no, I'm going to give you cancer, if you don't quit that. Okay, you're going to take my life if I don't stop that or
Right.
whatever, I mean, but it almost sort of really portrays exactly how it works a lot of times in our lives, where we're going to him and then he hardens the situations, hardens Pharaoh's heart or whatever about the situation and says no, and we keep going back to him sort of with a new offer. Well, how about if I just quit cheeseburgers, okay, I won't have fries with it or whatever, we're still versus like, okay, maybe I should just eat healthy. Is that what you're trying to say, Dad? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Yes, sir, Carol.
Isn't he got some, Obama is trying to be king himself, and so on. It just shows us a mark of, what people's ideas are of life, period.
Absolutely. Well, I'll throw this out, though. I don't think that he necessarily has made himself king as much as we have made him king. Does that make sense? Just,
But people join
Huh?
and God is very
well, yeah, but I'm saying that, what I'm saying is that, yes, and I see your point as far as, I know what you're saying, Jim, as far as the, God puts in power who he's going to have in power. I get that aspect of it. But I'm saying as far as the kingly aspect, the kingly What gives him the this air of nobility or this air of he does no wrong is the acceptance that we give him.
That's
Does that
right.
make sense? Right. We cover up our eyes. Absolutely. It's all a blinding aspect.
Everything he does is right.
Sure. Sure. Now,
No matter what God has said or is saying throughout life, he thinks he's right over God.
oh, absolutely. Well, I don't think he's the only one that's ever thought that either, though.
No, but,
I think Hitler kind of cornered that market for a little while too. But let's go to another thing I thought was really interesting, because I've heard this before, but I never really understood it. In chapter 11, verse 7. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel.
I heard on something on GLC this morning about the dogs barking, and apparently they think that the taskmasters had dogs to keep the Hebrews under control,
Okay?
to use against them if they weren't doing their job or whatever. It's happening.
Okay.
On the left, I put the word for harden, when you harden Pharaoh's heart. And
What'd you say?
read that.
Yeah.
Because basically what God says is, I will harden his heart. In other words, I will make him, I will give him the strength to stand up against me.
Make it strong.
Strengthen what's already in his heart.
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't, I think in English, we have thought he's gonna change his heart.
Right, no, God gave him the ability to withstand the test to prove who he is.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you don't take it back to the Hebrew, what we're thinking is, okay, God messed with his free will.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you go back to the Hebrew and you get the words, and there's, let's see, it's Kazakh, and then, yeah, there's another one. Kazakh.
I think the Bible teaches once a child, always a child, but it doesn't mean that you'll be saved.
Different word for heart in this Torah portion. I don't know what it is.
When we look at the difference put between Egypt, the Egyptians and Israel, what were those physical differences? It says in chapter 11, verse 7, it says, But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel.
He made a distinction.
Okay? What are those?
For the time of the fourth plague.
Okay? Well, what are those? What are those distinctions? What are the differences between the two?
And he done it with a miracle, and we could do so she was saved almost like
That's one.
over the rest of the world.
That's one. That's one separation.
While
Absolutely.
World War II came.
There's one.
A little bitty country thought they'd be here when they
But what's another distinction? What's another difference? Because there's more than one.
The Egyptians worship idols.
Okay? Okay.
What,
The Egyptians worship idols.
What else, guys?
that Israel had the one true God?
Okay. All right.
The Israelites were actually separated from them physically. in that
Physically.
land.
The land actually being in Goshen versus actually in the heartland. Okay?
As opposed to the Egyptians who would do something to call on their God. Israel just sat there and God took care of everything.
Awesome. Okay, that's what I was actually looking for. It's that every time that Pharaoh's magicians and wizards and whatever they were would call on their gods, it was all of this big act, right? It was all a big act, every bit of it. It's all about the showmanship of the thing, right?
Like Elijah of Mount
Absolutely, absolutely. He's asleep. Wake him up. Maybe you're catching him when he's gone. Is he in the bathroom? I mean,
dancing and cutting himself.
Right. Right, absolutely. So the difference is, the fact is that something actually had to be done to call on these gods versus this one's coming with a vengeance no matter what. And he's doing it because of the cries of his people, but it's not because they're cutting themselves. It's not because they're doing these things. It's not because they're sacrificing to their idols and all that. Yes, ma'am.
That our God's a true God. He's not like this pagan God. He's
Okay.
a true God.
All right, you're hitting on the next point that I want to get to, and that's it though. The fact is that he's that one true God. Now, it says that that they may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. Now, from that point on, what has God allowed? From that point on, He's allowed anyone, because it starts in this very next portion, or in this very next chapter, that who can partake in the Passover?
Anyone with blood on their door.
Anyone with blood on their door. Anyone, right? He is now saying, I've put these differences in place. I have made these differences known so that now anyone can come and follow the true one God. Right? Because now he's saying, I've destroyed all their gods. This is the last act is going to be destroying the last god, right? And so he's saying, I am now opening the door for everyone to come in. Because who actually left with Moses in the Exodus?
A mixed
Mass
multitude.
multitude. A mixed multitude. Okay? We don't know how many numbers of who and this and that and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not getting into that. But what I'm saying is that from this point on, he's put a difference between the people with the fact that they have their own land. That was set up when? Back in Joseph's day. That was back in Joseph's day when he set up this difference of having Goshen. And the fact that it was the most fertile and the fact that it was the best land. These differences were set up way back here, but it was also to show that, all right, here's the differences. The differences is that we have the one and true only God. Now, you see that because we've destroyed all your gods. Now, here's your opportunity to come and follow Him. Not us, not Moses. Come and follow Him. So, I just thought that was really cool because it actually shows that here. Yes, ma'am.
A little thing on that same note, there's great difference between Israel and all the surrounding countries.
Sure, absolutely.
They're like desert and horrible, and
Right.
Israel is plush and beautiful.
Absolutely. And that's the provision of God. I mean, absolutely it
It's
is.
like they're in the land of Goshen. Israel
It's,
is true land of Goshen.
it's that oasis in the middle of the desert.
Well, in every way, it's
Right.
a democracy. It's, I mean, they're so intelligent, so innovative.
Absolutely. No, I'm totally with you. All right. So then he hit on the fact that the first commandment given before Sinai to all the children of Israel, okay, was for what?
But the doors, the bread on
It was
the
the calendar. It was the calendar. The calendar was the first one. He was like, look, we are going to scratch everything you've been taught, everything that's been driven into you with these taskmasters and everything else. We're going to scratch that. Yes, sir.
That'd be like having inherited lives.
Absolutely. Inheriting lies. Right. Well, and that's, I mean, he's just saying, he's like, okay, you've known one way of life. I mean, why are they groaning? Why are they under such burden?
They're slaves.
They're slaves. They don't know any other way of life. They don't know what it was like back in Canaan before they came. There was only 70 that came to Egypt at that time anyway, so now there's millions of people. They have no idea what it's like to be free. They have no idea what it's like to not be subject to someone. Okay? So he's saying to them, he's like, we're going to start over, and the first place you start is what? The calendar. You have to start over with the calendar. Because how are you supposed to follow a pattern if you don't have a calendar? Can any of us follow a good pattern? Can you get to work on time if you don't have a calendar? No? You can't. Okay. Now,
We have this calendar, would you read this for us, please?
what is it?
I'm trying to, I'm kind of confused here because it's saying the month of Abib, I think. is what it says.
Abib.
Abib. But if you'll read that to us,
Which one?
that's that second one there, the Passover lamb.
Passover lamb, New Year's connection. Here in the West, we begin the new year in January, but in the Bible, it wasn't that way. Biblical New Year wasn't January, nor was it September, as many think. It was in the spring. It came with the month in Hebrew called Nisan.
And that's from the Babylonian captivity.
Yeah, Nisan came after the Babylonian captivity. Aviv is what.
Aviv is God's.
Aviv is God's, right.
But Aviv means the ripening of the barley grain.
It's at
Right.
Passover, that's why
It,
you
it
say.
means spring.
Or spring, but it's when barley is
Right, it's, okay, God's calendar is centered around what? His law, okay? And when I mean His law, can you plant a papaya? Can you plant a papaya in rock and it take off and make a papaya tree?
Any of that in Texas, it was the right season.
Right. As long as it's real little bit of rocks. Well, what if you don't water it, Jay? Will it take off and do its thing? Not real well. What if you give it no sun at all? You have it shaded the whole time. Not real well. God has His own calendar based on His physical law. His physical law works like this: the sun comes up. Guess what? Have you ever seen trees and some of the plants that actually follow the sun throughout the day?
Sunflowers.
Sunflowers, absolutely. In fact, they turn. Okay,
The morning glory.
those are actually part of God's law. And God laid His calendar out that way so that what? We'd have a sign for what time of year it was. Because He's not relying on us all to have a paper calendar stuck to our wall that says, hey, Timmy's birthday's tomorrow. You know, that's not what He's counting on. He's counting on us to be able to go anywhere in the world, any part of the world, to a place we have no connection with anybody in the land and have lost our mind completely, yet know when the barley's going to be ripe.
Seasons.
To know when the seasons are. To know what time of year it is. To know these things. Why? Because it's His calendar. So, that's the difference, in my opinion.
But he's just saying that it's, at Passover is the new year.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
But he's calling it
14 days
Esau.
before Passover.
And the Jews still teach that there are two different calendars in the Jewish faith.
Right.
The spiritual calendar and the secular calendar. And so Rosh Hashanah is the secular calendar, but they still go by this spiritual calendar.
But the two terms of Nisan and Aviv, I think is a lot,
That's what
is presenting some confusion.
Yeah.
It's those two words.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
became Nisan after the Babylonian captivity.
But the real ones
The one
It came
in
Nisan after what?
Babylonian captivity, that's where the names of their months came from.
So, if you own a fireworks stand, you could actually do it twice a year. I'm just saying.
I'm selling.
Okay.
Actually,
3 times a year. Actually, 3 times a year. Absolutely. Right.
4 times.
Except for the fire ban.
There you go with those laws again.
Okay. I thought it was very interesting because I've never actually seen how many times he goes over the same thing. We all know that when God repeats Himself, it's something important, right?
Right.
If He repeats Himself twice, we got to pay attention. If He repeats Himself 3 times, how much more important is it? What if He repeats
least
Himself
50%.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in 6 verses?
Where you at?
It's not only important, it's that you cannot go without this. Alright? We're in 12:15.
Okay.
Yeah, or let's go to 14 first. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. Well, first off, we know that forever is for a long time. But then he's talking about Passover there. But right then, he starts going into what? Unleavened bread. Okay? Now, I honestly think, and it maybe I'm just throwing out opinion here, I'm throwing out my own take on something, but he actually states in here, let's go to 15. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. This isn't a place that he is showing any relax or any forgiveness or latitude. The latitude is the word I'm looking for.
You don't think it's a false threat?
I don't think so.
You don't
Not-
think we can cut that out?
no, not at
There we
all.
go.
Not at all.
It's like reading of the curve.
You're right. In fact, he shows that there is no curve right here. Because he goes, and he states that, and then, in the first day there shall be a holy convocation. In the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which the man must eat. That only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generation by an ordinance forever. He's putting a lot of importance. He's building this thing up. Build. So far it's okay, here's what it is. You're not going to do any work. This is going to be forever. Those are three bold statements. I mean, those are the biggest statements he's got, all right? And then he keeps going. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 1 and 20th day of the month at evening. So he's laying out the calendar again. I mean, how many times has he done that so far? He's already said it's 7 days. This is the second time he's brought up that it's how many days? 7 days. Okay? 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth it, that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land.
That word is karath, just in the Hebrew,
Proper.
and there's no question. It's not iffy. It says to cut off, to cut down, to cut off a body part,
Right.
to cut out, eliminate, kill, cut a covenant.
Okay, now, we just talked about how the fact that, we've just gone through the fact that in Passover, though, a stranger that is among you cannot eat of the Passover, right? He can't eat of it, but he can be with you. Here it's saying, even the stranger among you shall not eat leaven. That's, all right, why is he crossing that now? Why is he saying, now no one can partake? Yes, sir.
I believe it's because they'd had a year to learn. So they could either be conformed and join in and identify themselves as children of God and that being of His people, or just being companions.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what are you saying there? So let's say you have someone new comes into your house. You're about to keep Passover. If he's pretty much just come into your house, he cannot partake of Passover. But from unleavened bread forward, he can keep. And he's to keep all of these things as a stranger in your house, so that by the next year, when Passover comes, he can partake.
Graduation.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it's a picture. I don't know if it's true, but I'm just saying
Well,
it's a
let
potential
me throw
picture.
this in. Because he's talking about your house.
Right.
Mhm.
How many people just let people bring stuff into your house?
Mm.
Mary, you just allow anything to come through the door? No.
We do
My
it
wife is the same way. Right. I mean, but it's one of those things where it's like, Randy K knows what is coming through the door before it gets there. Does that make sense? If someone's coming over and they bring something, if it's during that time, it doesn't come through our door.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Right, during unleavened bread, you're saying, right? Yeah.
Because what have you just said if you allow that into your house?